Hello, I'm Erin Marcus, founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, and I want to welcome you to Ready Yet? If all you needed was a step-by-step plan of what to do, you could buy a book on how to succeed and you would be all set. But here's the rub. You'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it. The Ready Yet podcast is dedicated to those who are ready to become the person who succeeds, ready to become the person who steps into more, and ready to become the best version of themselves. In the I'm Ready interview series, join me for inspiring conversations with people who figured out who they needed to be in order to achieve their dreams, and were brave enough to be that person. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast, where I get to have amazing conversations with people and talk about what it is that they went through to get to where they are now. And so hopefully you can glean nuggets along their journey that you can use for yourself. And I'm excited about today's guest because I very, very strongly believe in the power of networking, and it's not who you know, it's who they know. And that's how I met today's guest, Deborah Goldstein, because we have a mutual friend who also believes in the power of networking. And she's like, oh my God, you have to meet Deborah. She's really cool. You guys will like each other. And here we are. So why don't you give everyone a little more formal introduction to who you are and what it is that you do?
I would love to. And thank you so much, Erin, for inviting me to have this conversation today. I am the proud founder of Driven Professionals, and I tell people that I've got the best job on earth because I help organizations and individuals live their best lives. So when it comes to organizations, I help them create psychological safety in their workplace. That entails diversity, equity, inclusion training, as well as emotional intelligence training, as well as conversational intelligence training, which I am certified in and changed my life. And I also help people with intentional productivity. You know, the sense that we can't do it all is absolutely true. We can't do it all. But people, when they recognize what is important to them, and understand how to create habits and practices and boundaries, we can have what's important to us. So that, in a nutshell, is my professional side. And personally, I love the outdoors. I love kayaking. I love walking. I do my morning march every day, and I love to cook. Oh. So that's kind of me in a very
quick nutshell. Love it. So I have questions already, right? The two things that came up for me as you're talking about how you help people on an organization side is this movement from when you and I first entered corporate world, to age us a little bit, to a much more, the group, I'm attending their event this evening, in fact, conscious capitalism. Mm-hmm. Right? This movement that from the idea of, well, I write your paycheck, you should just do whatever I tell you, and into a more full circle environment for people. So how did you get involved in that?
It's an interesting way you phrased the question, because as you were speaking, back in the last century, when I started in my first job after college, which was in a restaurant, I was a restaurant manager. I went to my boss one day and I was disturbed because of a server. And my boss said, servers are a dime a dozen. And I took umbrage to it. And that stuck with me for a long time. And really the change now is, in this day and age, for organizations to appreciate their human capital, which is their most valuable asset, is their employees, right? So I've never thought about that connection before, but I suppose that's an important part of my being active and passionate about helping employees in organizations feel safe and feel heard, because when we feel safe, we're able to be fully engaged, fully productive, and fully creative. our brain allows that.
Well, and it's to the organization's benefit. If you go back to like different theories around leadership, you have your authority because of your title, but authority earned is so much more powerful than authority by title or authority by position. And when you create the environment, because I don't get the impression from you that you're talking about never being able to say anything and you have to tiptoe on eggshells around every little thing. A lot of people like to use that argument against just being a better human being.
Yes, and the beautiful thing about the work that I do with organizations is I actually help people and empower people to have conversations, not difficult conversations, because that's kind of like, don't think of a pink elephant. Oh, then I've got
right, exactly.
When you think of a difficult conversation, you tense up right away and you can't have a conversation that is flowing. So through my conversational intelligence training and the embodiment, so I walk through life as a conversational intelligence person, it opens up people to having conversations where we connect, where we build trust. And in that way, you and I can talk about the different ways that we see a challenge, a solution, and we come up with a better ways of going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so funny as I'm listening to your delivery, and you're right, because you've had this training and certification, but as I'm listening to your calm, confident delivery, all I can picture is the stereotype of a restaurant manager who is often the opposite of the persona that you are now expressing.
Well, if I may gently push back.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why
the restaurant people I know in my horrible teenage years in a hot dog stand was chaos on a stick, right? I mean, oh my gosh. So maybe that was part of where I'm coming from. You always, it's such a difficult industry. It is such a difficult industry.
Yeah. And when I was 10, I decided that I wanted to own a restaurant, not knowing how difficult the industry was. And at 25, I opened a restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I think that one of my superpowers is to be totally calm in the midst of chaos, because every single day, at least once a day, something happened that was, to blow up the ship. And
absolutely.
And able to really get to the heart of the matter to manage it was a beautiful part of my restaurant existence. So I suppose that what you're bringing out to me is that was a kernel that has served me all of these years.
Yeah. We had the same thing when I worked with, my last business was working with families with aging parents. And I had 15 team members, and one of my mottos for our company, don't add to the drama. Like there's so much trauma going on for these families. Don't add to it. Don't add to the trauma. Don't add to the drama. Don't get sucked into the story, but also don't. And it's the same type of thing. I think the people who are in roles where you can be the calm in somebody else's storm is extremely valuable.
Especially as I'm hearing you speak in my coaching. As I'm coaching clients, it is my challenge is to help them with perspective. I call it coming up to the balcony and looking down on the situation. And at times when I have not been as successful in a session, I recognize it's because I've been pulled into the drama and I haven't been able to help people look from above at what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a situation yesterday myself where one of my clients got really upset, and I was like, no, this has nothing to do with me. And then you're able to help them reflect, like, what's really going on there.
Yeah.
And then, let's back up a step to what you were talking about, who want it all. And I think the challenge there is not knowing what all is, right? Like you want it all, but then when you really think about it, you probably didn't want half those things.
Yes, I think of that as really getting in touch with your intrinsic values versus extrinsic values. Your intrinsic values are what really move and motivate you, as opposed to, oh, I need to be X amount of pounds because that's what everybody expects. I need to be this size in clothing. I must vacation here and here. So you're absolutely right. So often we are pulled by the tide of what we think we should be doing, as opposed to getting really quiet and understanding from inside of us what motivates us and what thrills us, and what I call it a heart burst, what makes my heart burst.
Nice. So what made your heart burst to draw you from a restaurant business into coaching? Or were there intermediary steps?
There were quite a few intermediary steps. The first being a recognition that 7 years into a successful and beloved restaurant, I recognized I can't have a restaurant and a love life at the same time. I was accepting dates on Monday afternoon, Monday evenings, if nobody called in sick. And I realized that's not how I want to live my life. So I closed my restaurant, not knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up. And it was hard. It was, looking back, I think, wow, you were crazy.
Right, exactly. you violated parent rule number 1. Don't quit your job until you have your next job, right?
Yes. Which a lot of people are doing right now.
Right.
It's the great resignation.
Yeah.
And I must say I was lost for quite a while after I closed my restaurant. Lost not with a job. I closed and I decided to give myself 6 months to figure out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And within 2 months, I had accepted a role as a wine salesperson. But what I didn't do is I didn't take the time to look inside of myself and determine what my intrinsic values were. And so it took quite a few turns and stumbles. And I really landed on coaching through workshop facilitation, which started with something that I created called strategic dining. When it sounds like you will very much appreciate this, because we as restaurant people who have worked in restaurants, which I think every human being should work at a restaurant for a period of time. It's very humbling. Yeah. But I recognize that business people who used to go out for meals, and hopefully will after COVID or when COVID settles down, but business meals are often wasted opportunities. They are wasted opportunities for connection and for talking about business ideas. And you had mentioned in the intro, the networking piece. Business meals are a wonderful way to get to know and nurture and expand your network. And yet people were blowing them. They weren't taking advantage. So I created something called strategic dining, which was referred to in one of my testimonials as Miss Manners meets Anthony Bourdain meets Peter Drucker. So I started with facilitating these types of workshops at organizations, accounting firms and law firms and banks. And then they started to ask for more. Can you do some sessions about networking? Yeah, I could do that. Can you do some sessions about executive presence? So I kept on growing this soft skills, what I call success skills toolbox. Mm-hmm. And then people started to ask me, well, do you do some coaching? I need some help here. I need some help with my personal energy management. I need some help with my executive presence. And so I started coaching, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable about the fact that I was not certified in coaching. And so I took the Conversational Intelligence coaching program, and now I'm just a coaching, I'm a coaching education.
Right, exactly. I'm always doing something. So there's 2 things you did, and you can take credit for them if you did them on purpose, and take credit for them if you did them by accident. But there's 2 things you did in your journey that are key pieces of success. Is you took a step. So you gave yourself 6 months to figure it out. But even though you didn't have the perfect answer, you took a step. And as opposed to just standing still, you can't course correct from standing still, right? You took a step, which led you to your next step, which led you to your next step as you mentioned, you weaved your way instead of sitting back and waiting for the perfect answer. And the second thing you did that I absolutely love is you got good at something and then responded to the market. You responded to the marketplace, then you responded again to the marketplace, because it's a way of vetting your offer. And so many times I meet entrepreneurs who try to create something to offer in a bubble, right? They sit down and it's not that they're wrong. It's not that they're going to be entirely off base. But the path to success is so much more likely to be successful if you're responding and able to give the market what it's telling you it wants from you, instead of spending time and money creating something and then trying to force it on the market.
Well, as far as the first piece that you brought up about action, action is much better than inaction. I got antsy, after living my whole life in restaurants. I mean, I got my first job at 16 and I was in motion the whole time, sitting still to look within. I mean, there was a lot going on within. I was feeling guilty. I was feeling shame. I was feeling regret about closing a successful restaurant. And that means that I wanted to quit my job and my whole staff lost their job because of that. So I was harboring some not great feelings. I lost my voice. I mean, this was my dream and I closed it. So by taking this job in wine, I was in action, which didn't give me the time to really think.
And also to willingly give up what most people are fighting just to achieve makes you feel like you're being ungrateful.
Yes. And thankfully, gratitude is something that I practice since before I even knew the word. I started a gratitude practice when I was about 10 years old. And every day I would recite my 5 gratitudes. And when I told my father about this a couple of years after that, he said, wow, I never thought about a gratitude practice. And now look around, gratitude.
Right.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I know I really enjoy having conversations about who you need to be in order to reach new heights. As founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, I work with my clients at the intersection where what they need to do to succeed meets who they need to be to do it. If you would like to have a conversation about your business, please reach out to me at erin@conqueryourbusiness.com.
Yeah. So as far as this adapting to what the market is asking for, that's a very kind thing that you've just said. I call it pivot, 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 pivot.
In the moment,
working, pivot. And just at some point, I mean, it took a long time for Driven to find our momentum, our balance of offering, something that makes sense, that is cohesive and holistic. So it's a lot of pivoting.
And I love what you're saying, because there is a difference between pivoting because of a marketplace opportunity and squirrel. And so many of us are really good at shiny object squirrel, quick right turn, which is very different, because that's usually coming from a place of insecurity, not being confident. But then it's not failure, it's feedback, gathering the data of each and every one of those steps so that you can make a smarter next pivot.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the growth mindset. And I used to say, I'm not a failure, I've just failed, but I like what you've just said so much better. It's not failure, it's feedback. I love that.
I've learned one more thing, not to try to sell to my clients, right? Or not to try to put in play. It's just, and the other thing about the concept of it's not failure, it's feedback, is it makes you a little brave, because now I'm just trying to see what happens. I'm not trying to do it. I'm just trying to see what happens.
I agree. Yeah.
So in this journey, what are you most proud of? What are you absolutely most proud
I think the fact that I truly embody what I support people with is, and I hesitated because I don't think of that as proud. I think of that as Deborah. But at the same time, what I give to people is what I practice. The way that I go about my life, the way that I go about creating boundaries, creating opportunities, creating challenges, it's absolutely authentic to me. And it feels really good to be able to, I suppose, to use your words, bravely go into situations uh, with a lot of unknowing, because I know that this really is me. I'm not putting on a face. I'm not putting on a mask. I'm not putting on a persona. This is what I do. It's worked for me. It's worked for hundreds and thousands of clients. So this is what I have to offer. And so to live an authentic life, I'm pretty proud of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that whole idea of the author, of all the different themes that have come out. I've now done over 65 interviews, and one of the themes that came up pretty quickly and has stayed absolutely consistent is, especially as an entrepreneur, success is tied to being your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like a great program I can offer. That sounds like a great Facebook meme. But the truth of the matter is, it's hard to be your authentic self, because it means putting your true self out there. And we're all worried about being judged, or instead of following the path that you were supposed to have followed, whatever that is. But to really embrace your authentic self takes some reflection to figure out who it is after the world got its hands on you, right? But also to be brave enough to be that person.
And I suppose because I am motivated to inspire 21st century leadership, which is a matter of being vulnerable and raising your hand when you mess up. How can we improve upon this? That perhaps it's basher, it's fate that I am doing what I'm doing.
I have a random question for you, because it just popped up as you were talking. Because I absolutely agree with you, 21st century leadership. When we watch different social movements and different voices trying to be heard, is about authenticity, inclusion, owning what you did right, owning what you did wrong. And yet at the same time, and this is what I'm so curious about, at the same time, in the same culture, is the extreme opposite. Culture can't cancel culture. And it's just very interesting to me as an observation, as how some of these themes that are so diametrically opposed to each other are thriving at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And they will continue, there will two steps forward, one step back.
Mm.
And
I just want to stop there for a second, because this is something I've not solved. I don't know that I have an opinion. I mean, I have a little bit of an opinion about it, but it's just an observation. And I really like that idea, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And maybe that is some of why we see what we see.
And the other part of it, if I may, I don't have the answers either, but this is what I'm observing, and this is what people are feeling, is I've always done it this way. How could it's kind of like leaning into a motorcycle as it turns, as opposed to,
yes, right. Your instinct is to go the other way.
That's right. And
that's very true.
It's a scary change to make. And it is as scary as it is, as other people are making it, and more as in 21st century leadership, as opposed to command and control. Right. The people who are commanding and controlling are feeling scarcity. So they are holding on even tighter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what in your journey didn't work at all? Like, I call 2018 Erin's year of failure. What is your journey, just that looking back, we can help somebody? One of the odd compliments that I embrace that I received some time ago from a mentor of mine is, what did he say to me? One of the great things about you is you're willing to shout your mistakes from the rooftop, if only to tell other people, just don't do it that way and you'll do great. So I'm often wondering, like, what did you really try to do that we can share with, let them, lessen someone's learning curve by avoiding what you did?
Learn from my mistakes.
Learn from my mistakes.
Yeah. I think that early on in Driven, the organization tried to be too many things to too many people.
Okay.
We had a lot of great talent to help in different ways. And it was too much. The message got diluted. People were not sure what we did. And to be able to recognize that boundaries are applicable to businesses as well as to people, figure out what really matters to me, what kind of impact I would like to have on the world, and determine how to offer that was a big, it was difficult, because I felt like everything that we did successfully, I want to hold on to that because it's an offering that we were successful with. But to let go of that finally, and it came because of burnout, not because of anything else.
Right, not because of a stroke of brilliance, but right. That's interesting that you said that. So I have a friend who you may know of, Scott McCain. He's a Hall of Fame speaker. His topic is really distinction. One of his books, New York Times bestselling book, is called Iconic. The other one is Creating Distinction. And one of his concepts is clarity, like who you are and who you are not, and then creativity, but creativity within the clarity, creativity within the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's one of my things. I reread some of his stuff, and I'm also friends with him. So I don't know what he did that piqued my interest again on Facebook or something. And I'm like, oh, I should look at that again. And that's one of my new thoughts that I keep trying to keep front and center. Am I being creative within my boundaries instead of squirrel?
And because you are producing this podcast for entrepreneurs, yes, be creative within that clarity. And when something's not working, don't hesitate in moving out of that clarity. Zoom out a little bit. So you're a little bit blurred, like my background, and then zoom back in to see if perhaps just a pivot, a slight pivot could fit better.
Absolutely. And that's why it's all about tracking everything you do. Feedback. I teach sales, and I teach sales tracker, track your conversations. And the most important column in the whole tracker is feedback to yourself.
I call that the debrief.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I love the insights that you've shared. If someone wants to continue this conversation with you, learn more about Driven, learn more about how you can really make a difference and help folks get clear on what they want so they can have it all once they define what all is, let alone and create these organizations of a conscious leader. How do they get a hold of you?
They can reach out to me at deb@drivenpros.com, and they can check out our website, drivenpros.com, and they can drop me a note on the contact page, or they can try and scream at the top of their lungs.
I always say, here's the thing about interviewing entrepreneurs. We're not really hiding, right? None of us are trying to hide. So
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd love to hear from people on LinkedIn too. Since you mentioned social media, that's not usually my first thing to think about, but yeah, we're out there.
Neither, but it's there. It's there. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I know people are going to pick up some inspiration and motivation by what you've shared, and having that impact.
Thank you again for inviting me, Erin. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Ready Yet podcast. I get so motivated by the amazing accomplishments of the remarkable people I meet, and I'm excited to be able to share some of their stories with you. You can find more episodes of Ready Yet at your favorite source for podcasts or at conqueryourbusiness.com. And if you've already decided that you are ready to become the person you need to be to achieve your big goals, feel free to reach out to find out how I can support you in your efforts. Or check out the Work with Erin page on the Conquer Your Business website. I also invite you to share this podcast with anyone you know who loves to learn and be inspired. And if you're so inclined, I'd be absolutely grateful for any reviews you'd like to share as well. Thanks again for joining me. This has been Erin Marcus, hopefully inspiring and helping you to go conquer your big dreams.